Hello everybody, I just saw Wicked, the movie based on a musical, based on a book, based on another movie, based on another book. I haven't seen the musical and knew virtually nothing about it other than what the poster looked like, which made me very entertained by this controversy where the star of the film, Cynthia Erivo, had a temper tantrum on her Instagram about somebody who photoshopped the poster to look more like the original, which offended her somehow. I have no idea why she decided to have a public meltdown towards someone with like 50 Instagram followers who's probably a big fan of hers, when there are obviously people out there who go out of their way to make actually offensive photoshops. But who knows? Not to go into conspiracy theory territory, but some of these big celebrities act like weird alien creatures pretending to be humans. Like, what the hell is Ariana Grande doing with her finger there? But anyways, I am completely unfamiliar with Wicked as a property. I do, however, really love the original Wizard of Oz. I love how imaginative it is in that way where you have no idea how somebody thought it up, and how interesting it is that it struck such a chord with people for whatever reason, and has been such a big impact on American pop culture for the past 85 years. While a song like Over the Rainbow is really simplistic, the emotions are strong. There's a reason why David Bowie essentially repurposed it for the chorus of Starman.
Starman waiting in the sky.
Somewhere over the rainbow.
Or how Israel Kamakawiwa Ole redefined it with his cover. And it's just a really visually pretty movie and fun in an old-timey way. I'm clearly saying all of this for comparison's sake. But before I talk about Wicked, I do need to jump into one more tangent, to talk about movie etiquette. Do not whip out your phone to take pictures of the screen. This isn't a concert. I've seen this on social media and I saw people doing it at my theater. Stop. Everybody clapped whenever a big musical number ended. Why? The performers are not there to hear you clap. This isn't a live theater performance. Thankfully, nobody was singing when I saw it. Apparently, this got so bad that AMC had to make a preview before their showings where they tell the audience no singing, wailing, flirting, or name calling, which is just absurd. I'm sorry, but the fact that they even had to make this is just so embarrassing. So luckily, I didn't have to deal with people singing, wailing, flirting, or name-calling, but there was someone sitting near me who started to sort of hum during one of the songs. Maybe in their head they were like, yeah, what you gonna do about it? You never said nothing about humming. It was very distracting for me, but not as distracting as the person who would yell and kick their seat every time Fiyero, played by Jonathan Bailey, showed up. You suck. At first I was super annoyed, but then I thought to myself, man, I wish I cared about anything in my life as much as that person cares about Jonathan Bailey in this movie. I guess I should talk about the actual movie now. Here comes the hot takes. I'll start off with the hottest one of all, which is that I wasn't that into the music. I didn't hate any of it, most of it was fine. The singing from both leads was impressive. There were a few memorable choruses and impressive vocal flourishes. I like the way the first track transitions rhythmically. There's some goofy instrumentation I like too. Popular has some nice chord changes, but for the most part I found the music very forgettable. After listening to some of the musical's original Broadway cast recording, I feel like that had a lot more personality. The song Dancing Through Life in particular has a really over-present percussion section that I thought ruined the song in the movie version. The musical version had a much better instrumental section that reused melodic phrases in a much more logical way. I felt the way they kept pausing Defying Gravity was obnoxious, and I wasn't even familiar with how this song was structured originally. I really don't love the original soundtrack, but this version just made me feel like it was disregarding some of the more unique elements in an attempt to make it sound big and cinematic, which just made it sound like some of these songs were really unbalanced because they weren't originally written to sound like that. There's also another issue that I think plagues many films that are adaptations of Broadway musicals. In most musicals that begin as films, I feel like the musical numbers usually push the story forward and serve much more of a narrative purpose. Maybe there will be a little less going on in the story than normal, or the information being communicated will be a little more repetitive, but it's okay for a little less to be happening when there's music to entertain the audience. But in many film musicals like Wicked, which began as Broadway musicals, the story just feels like it comes to a grinding halt every time the characters break into song. Other than the opening, every song just felt like it was communicating one thing on the character's mind over and over and over again, which is probably fine when it's not a film because the music and choreography is more the focus in the context of a live musical, but when it is a film, I just don't think that really cuts it. And maybe it would be fine if I really enjoyed the music and had an emotional connection to it, but I don't, so I find these scenes boring. I genuinely have far more of an emotional connection to the music from the original Wizard of Oz, and that may have to do more with my exposure to it when I was younger than the quality, but it's how I feel. I'm also just noticing how many of my favorite musicals are animated. I think this might be because visually the sky is the limit during the musical numbers, but also I really love exaggerated vocal inflections in this context. Think about how distinct and memorable the voices of characters like Ursula, Jack Skellington, or Scar are. It's because they're not just showing off their vocal chops. But they're also playing characters with their voice.
Simply why I'll be king undisputed, respected, saluted.
Unfortunate soul, go ahead, make your choice. Not anyone in fact, but me, why I could make a Christmas tree.
To be fair, during Popular, Ariana Grande occasionally was doing a high-pitched nasally thing that I liked, but that's pretty much all I picked up on in terms of this kind of thing. So I've talked about the songs, what about the sequence of events? I liked the ending, it was intriguing to end it in that way. Even though the turn the story takes is predictable, there were aspects to it that were surprising. The story felt like it was amping up in a fun way. I mentioned I liked the song at the start that served more of a narrative purpose than the others. Other than that, I was completely uninterested in the story. During the Shiv University section, which is pretty much the bulk of the movie, I did not give a shit what was happening. In a story with magic and a plotline about animal abuse / animal racism, it's hard for me to care too much about school drama, and I understand that that's essentially what the story is, but that's kind of the problem for me. Songs like Popular tried to work itself out so it's not just about high school hierarchy, but songs like I'm Not That Girl were just lame to me because that kind of conflict is just so overdone. The whole, I like him, but he would never go for a girl like me. And yes, cliches can work in a story. They usually are kind of universally relatable to an extent. That's why they appear in stories so much. But you kind of have to do something to spice them up a little. Sally's song in Nightmare Before Christmas essentially is about the same thing, but I think it works a bit better because it adds some variation to the soundtrack. It's Sally's only song in the movie, and I also just feel like it has so much more personality instrumentally. This just felt like a grown woman pretending to be experiencing the inner conflict of a middle school girl, and it was unintentionally very funny to me. I just have no interest in this story in this state. Maybe I'll like the musical when I see it, maybe I'll feel a little differently when part 2 comes out, but as it is, I just felt completely indifferent, and I think that probably came down to the characters. Ariana Grande did a good job at the start acting pained and holding back emotion. Other than that though, Ariana Grande is already someone who I find obnoxious in the real world, so it's not endearing or funny to see her try and act extra fake and annoying. I genuinely don't know, was I supposed to care about her character at all by the end of the movie? 'Cause I didn't. There is one point in the movie where she is intentionally faking being sad so poorly that I thought it was really funny. Other than that, the only thing that made me laugh was when Jeffy was on screen, but that really isn't me laughing with the movie. I just found it funny in the same way I find it funny to see Christopher Walken in Dune. These actors who I can usually only see as the actors, not the characters they play, because they have very distinct, impressionable voices. He didn't do a bad job though, other than the singing, which is just half him talking and half an embarrassing amount of auto-tune, to the point where I don't even know why they asked him to sing. Cynthia Erivo was the best in both singing and acting departments. However, by the end of the nearly 3-hour-long movie, I still thought her character felt underdeveloped and one note. It's not her fault, but it just makes me think the amount that this character changes over the course of 150 minutes would feel more appropriate for about 80 minutes. Michelle Yeoh just felt like she was reading lines to me. I mean, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but she felt so dispassionate. Marissa Bode and Ethan Slater were very cheesy and made a lot of goofy faces. The cheesiness is probably more the fault of the director than the actors, but their acting was a level of fake that meant there was no chance of me seeing them as their characters. Andy Neiman was honestly kind of terrible as the dad of Elphaba, and Bowen Yang was trying so hard and being so over the top every single time he was on screen that I was genuinely embarrassed for him as a human being. Somehow he's the most annoying character in this movie, and he barely has any dialogue. Every time he was on screen, I was like, why is this character even in the movie? Peter Dinklage and all of the animal characters were not only poorly implemented into the film because they're entirely fake-looking animation, but all of their voices were clearly recorded in a different environment than the other characters who were talking to them, so there is zero chemistry between them and the real people. I think it was probably important to the story that Peter Dinklage's character and Cynthia Erivo have some sort of connection, but it doesn't work at all. Let's move on to the techie aspects everybody's talking about. The lighting, as many people are pointing out, is atrocious. The entire movie just looks so dark and desaturated, and the overuse of backlighting is super distracting. The director said that the lack of colors was for realism, which is stupid. You're making a musical about the land of Oz, make it look colorful. And even if it was supposed to look less colorful, it's just hard to even see the characters properly at points because of the weird lighting choices. The musical set pieces were sometimes impressive and sometimes had really cool sets, but sometimes they were just boring crane shots in random environments. There's this ballroom scene that I'm sure works in the setting of a musical, but in a film setting, I have no idea what's supposed to be happening here. And it's a really big shift between the characters' relationships, but it's so unintentionally awkward. The over-explaining of recognizable things from The Wizard of Oz is a trope that a lot of prequels do that I hate. I do not need backstory to the hat just because it's a prop that's recognizable. Why does Glinda have to be unnaturally shoehorned into the creation of the hat or the Yellow Brick Road? Was it supposed to get a big reaction to me when she offered yellow as the color? It's just really annoying and unnatural writing to me, and I hate it whenever prequels do this. It's also very transparent that these elements are only there because you know that thing. It's also very transparent in the scene with Christian Chenoweth and Idina Menzel that they're just trying to be like, hey, wow, we were pink and green and now you guys are pink and green. Isn't that crazy? Even if I didn't know who they were, it's very obvious what's happening in that scene, and what's even the point? There are ways to do this subtly and quickly.
The D is silent.
I know.
But in an already long movie, do we really need this overt fan service? This film wouldn't exist if Glinda didn't seem smug and manipulative in the original film. Can you blame me for being uninterested in a story that's supposed to expand the lore of the fever dream of a girl born in one of the most boring landmasses in the United States? I don't think the idea of, hey, what if the Wicked Witch of the West was actually the good guy is intriguing enough for 2 3-hour-long movies. That's about all I have to say about this one. I'll never watch it again. When it inevitably gets nominated for like 10 Oscars, the only one it will deserve in my eyes is production design. Maybe. I'm gonna give this a generous 2.5 stars out of 5. If part 2 is somehow great, I could see myself raising it to a 3 out of 5. If it sucks, I could see it becoming a 2 out of 5. Right now it's a 2.5. It's not my thing. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.